If you keep living as the person you were yesterday, how can you ever become the person you want to be tomorrow? Success doesn't escape you. It reflects who you are being in every moment. Most people don't fail because they can't succeed. They fail because they are addicted to the familiar. The reason most people never break through into the life they dream of is because they are unknowingly trapped in the cage of their old identity. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, and every behavior you repeat is part of a program you've been running for years, sometimes decades. You wake up in the morning and almost immediately you begin to remember who you are. You recall what happened yesterday, what you need to do today, and what is expected of you tomorrow. In that moment, you aren't creating something new. You are reliving the past. Your brain begins to fire the same old neural circuits that have been firing for years, and your body starts to feel the same emotions that belong to the past experiences. Before you've even had breakfast, you are already being defined by the person you were yesterday, and not by the person you could become. This is the silent trap of identity. We believe we are free to choose our future, but most people are simply recycling old patterns of thought, emotion, and action that keep producing the same predictable results. When you think the same thoughts, they lead to the same choices. Those choices create the same behaviors. Those behaviors create the same experiences, and those experiences generate the same emotions, and those emotions then feed back to reinforce the original thoughts, locking you into a self-perpetuating cycle. Day after day, you repeat the same level of mind, the same emotional states, and the same behaviors, and then wonder why your life never changes. The body becomes so conditioned to these repetitive emotional states that it memorizes them better than the mind does. If you have lived in stress long enough, your body becomes addicted to stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. If you have lived in fear long enough, your body anticipates danger even when there is none. If you have lived in doubt or frustration long enough, your nervous system automatically prepares for disappointment. In this way, the body becomes the mind. The subconscious programs running in your physiology override your conscious desire to change. You might tell yourself, I want to succeed, I want to be different, I want to create a new future. But the moment you attempt to step into unfamiliar territory, the body pulls you back to what it knows best, the old identity. This is why transformation feels so uncomfortable. It is not because you are incapable of change. It is because your body and mind have been programmed to return to the familiar, even if that familiar reality is filled with struggle and limitation. The body interprets the unknown as unsafe, even though the unknown is the only place where growth and success can actually happen. If you continue to identify as the person who is always struggling, who never has enough, who is overlooked or undervalued, then life will mirror that identity right back to you in the form of circumstances, people, and experiences that validate your story. To break free, you must become conscious of who you have been. Success requires a disruption of the cycle. It begins with awareness, catching the repetitive thoughts that say, I can't do this, or this is too hard, and refusing to let them define you. It requires observing the emotions that automatically rise, fear, insecurity, impatience, and recognizing that they are not who you are, but who you have practiced being. When you start to separate your sense of self from these old patterns, you loosen the grip of the old identity. You make space for a new one. A new identity is not created through force. It is created through intention. It requires you to imagine who you want to become before the evidence of that change appears in your life. You have to begin thinking the thoughts that this future version of you would think, feeling the emotions that this successful version of you would feel, and rehearsing the behaviors that this greater self would embody. By doing this, you are literally installing a new program into your brain and body. Neurons that fire together wire together. As you practice new thoughts, new circuits form. As you practice new emotions, new chemical signatures shape your internal state. As you act differently, your nervous system begins to familiarize itself with a new way of being. The challenge is that the old identity will resist. The mind will try to drag you back into familiar habits. The body will crave the old emotional states it has memorized for years. You may feel discomfort, doubt, or even fear when stepping into the unknown. But that discomfort is the evidence of change. It is the proof that you are no longer living as the same self you were yesterday. If you persist in practicing the new state of being long enough, the body will eventually adapt. What was once unfamiliar becomes the new familiar. The identity that once held you back dissolves, and a greater version of you emerges. When you finally begin to embody this new identity consistently, your external world must begin to reorganize itself to match your internal state. New opportunities show up, not because they suddenly appeared out of nowhere, but because your perception and energy are now aligned with them. New relationships come into your life, not because you were lucky, but because your new vibration resonates with people who match your future rather than your past. Success starts to unfold, not because you forced it, but because you became the person capable of creating it. The reason so many people struggle to create lasting success is not because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. It is because they are unconsciously addicted to what is familiar. The mind and body work together to create a sense of continuity, and once that continuity has been programmed deeply enough, anything outside of it feels uncomfortable, even threatening. This is why people sabotage their own growth. On the surface, they may say they want change, they may dream of more abundance, freedom, love, or health, but beneath the surface, their body has memorized emotions tied to the old reality, and the body clings to those emotions like a chemical addiction. Consider how often you've heard someone say, "I always seem to end up in the same type of relationship," or "no matter what I do, I keep struggling financially," or "every time I try to improve myself, something always pulls me back." These are not coincidences, they are evidence of the mind-body system working to maintain what is known. If someone has lived most of their life in stress, their nervous system has become calibrated to the hormones of stress. If someone has lived in self-doubt, their body anticipates failure before they even begin. If someone has lived in fear, their thoughts automatically scan for danger, even in moments of peace. What has been rehearsed repeatedly becomes familiar, and the familiar feels safe. The paradox is that people often mistake safety for happiness. The body doesn't care if the familiar pattern causes pain, anxiety, or limitation. It only cares that it is predictable. Predictability means survival. When you attempt to break away from what is predictable, the body sounds the alarm. You feel resistance, you feel uncomfortable, you feel like you want to retreat. This resistance is not proof that you are on the wrong path. It is proof that you are stepping beyond what the body knows. Yet most people misinterpret this discomfort as a sign they should stop, and they retreat back into the same cycles they've always known. The addiction to the familiar is subtle but powerful. Imagine someone who has lived in frustration for years. Their brain has fired those circuits of frustration so many times that the connections are hardwired. Their body has released the same cascade of chemicals so frequently that it craves them, just like an addict craves a drug. Even when things are going well, they unconsciously look for something to be frustrated about, because without that emotion they feel off balance. The body longs for what it knows, and so it recreates circumstances, thoughts, or reactions to produce the familiar state again. The same process happens with fear, anger, resentment, or even guilt. These emotions become the baseline of identity, and as long as the person is addicted to them, success will remain out of reach. The unknown is the exact opposite of the familiar. The unknown is expansive, unpredictable, and filled with potential. It holds the seeds of success, transformation, and growth. But to the body and mind conditioned by years of repetition, the unknown feels like danger. Stepping into the unknown is stepping into a space where the old programs lose their power, and this is why people resist it so much. It's not that they don't want to succeed, it's that the pull of the known feels safer than the promise of the unknown. The moment you decide to change, you are challenging the familiar. You may wake up early to meditate, you may take a risk to pursue your dream, you may choose to think greater thoughts instead of indulging in self-pity. At first, this feels exciting, but soon after, the body begins to rebel. The cravings for old emotions rise up. You feel the pull to think like your old self again, to feel stress or fear again, to act in the same reactive ways again. This is when most people quit, not realizing that they are in the midst of withdrawal. Just like a chemical addict detoxifying from a drug, you are detoxifying from familiar emotional states. The body craves what it has known, and until you teach it otherwise, it will fight to return to that old equilibrium. Breaking free requires awareness and repetition. You must become conscious of when you are slipping back into old emotional addictions and choose not to feed them. The moment you notice yourself falling into worry, you must pause and ask, is this the familiar trying to pull me back, or is this who I really want to be? The moment you notice yourself indulging in frustration or resentment, you must remember that every time you reinforce those emotions, you are rehearsing the old identity. By choosing to stay present, to breathe, to elevate your state even in small ways, you begin to retrain your body and mind. Over time, the unfamiliar becomes less intimidating and the familiar loses its grip. This is why success demands courage, not because success itself is inherently difficult, but because breaking the addiction to the familiar requires stepping into the discomfort of the unknown again and again. The unknown is where new possibilities live. It is where creativity, intuition, and opportunity align. It is where the greater version of you already exists, waiting for you to meet it. But to get there, you must be willing to experience the temporary unease of not being the old you anymore. You must resist the pull of the emotions that try to keep you small. You must endure the temptation to return to predictable patterns, knowing that the discomfort you feel is the very evidence that you are creating a new future. One of the greatest reasons people never succeed is because they fall into the illusion that life must change first, before they can change themselves. They wait for evidence in the external world to give them permission to feel different inside. They convince themselves that once the right opportunity shows up, once the right person enters their life, once the money comes, once the conditions finally align, then they will feel successful, grateful, inspired, or worthy. But this mindset is built on a misunderstanding of how reality truly works. When you wait for the external world to shift before you decide to embody a new internal state, you are reinforcing the old patterns that have kept you stuck. You are handing your power over to circumstances rather than realizing that your internal state is what generates those very circumstances. The truth is that the outer world is a mirror of the inner world. What you consistently think, feel, and embody becomes the blueprint for what shows up in your life. If you are waiting for success to happen before you feel successful, then your energy is reinforcing lack. You are broadcasting a signal of incompleteness, of waiting, of not yet. The longer you maintain this state, the more the external world organizes itself to reflect that state back to you. You attract delays, obstacles, and situations that validate the belief that success is always just out of reach. You live in the constant hope that someday something will arrive to change it all, but that someday never comes because the energy you are living in today does not match the reality you desire tomorrow. This way of living keeps you trapped in a cycle. You wake up each day looking around at your current circumstances and drawing conclusions about your future from what you see. You notice the bank account and feel stress. You look at your relationship status and feel lonely. You observe the lack of opportunity and feel discouraged. Those feelings then generate the same thoughts you've always had, and those thoughts influence the same actions. Without realizing it, you're creating the same predictable reality again and again because you're letting the outer world dictate how you feel inside. This is the very definition of being stuck. To succeed, you must reverse the process. Instead of waiting for the external to dictate the internal, you begin to allow the internal to shape the external. You begin to feel successful before the success arrives. You choose gratitude before there is something obvious to be grateful for. You choose inspiration before the opportunity shows up. When you elevate your internal state independent of circumstances, you begin to emit a completely new signal into the field of possibilities. That new frequency is what attracts experiences that match it. This is not positive thinking as a surface-level tactic. It is a deep reprogramming of your identity and energy. The challenge is that the mind conditioned by years of habit resists this. The rational brain says, "How can I feel abundant when I have nothing? How can I feel loved when I am alone? How can I feel successful when I keep failing?" The answer lies in understanding that reality does not change by continuing to embody the state of lack. If you continue to feel unsuccessful, you reinforce the state of being unsuccessful, and the external world has no choice but to reflect it. The only way to break the cycle is to live as if the future has already happened, to become the version of yourself that no longer waits but already embodies the energy of the reality you desire. This is not about pretending or faking. It is about aligning your emotions with a vision of your future that is so real internally that it becomes more compelling than the evidence of your senses. When you close your eyes and imagine the life you want with enough clarity, and when you feel the emotions of already living that life with enough intensity, your brain does not know the difference between the inner experience and an external one. It begins to wire new circuits as if that future were happening now. Your body begins to feel the chemistry of success, of abundance, of love, as though those realities already exist. In that moment, you are no longer waiting for circumstances to change. You are becoming the change yourself. The more you practice this state, the more familiar it becomes. What was once unnatural to feel joy or gratitude without a reason becomes natural. What was once difficult to feel worthy or confident without evidence becomes easier. Over time, you are no longer dependent on the outside world to make you feel a certain way. You have claimed your power back. And when you no longer need your environment to dictate your internal state, the environment begins to reorganize itself to match the new signal you are consistently sending. Opportunities begin to arrive not because you were waiting for them, but because you had already prepared yourself internally to meet them. Think of how many people postpone their lives because they are waiting. They wait until the kids are older, until the debt is gone, until the conditions are better, until they feel ready. In reality, they are postponing success indefinitely. Success is never found in waiting. It is found in choosing to feel now what you want to experience later. It is found in collapsing the timeline by embodying the future version of yourself today. When you stop waiting for external circumstances to grant you permission to succeed, you step into true freedom. You no longer rely on what you see in the mirror of the present moment. Instead, you anchor yourself in the reality of your vision. You allow your thoughts, feelings, and actions to flow from the future you want rather than the past you have known. You broadcast a new signature into the world, and the world has no choice but to respond in kind. Success does not come simply because someone wants it, or because they set a list of goals and chase them with sheer effort. Success arises when there is a clear vision of the future combined with an internal emotional state that aligns with that vision. Most people fail not because they lack goals, but because they lack vision, and they fail not because they lack effort, but because they lack emotional alignment with what they are trying to create. They move through life like ships without a compass, reacting to circumstances, responding to the demands of the moment, and repeating patterns that keep them anchored to the past. A goal written on paper does not have the power to change reality unless it is infused with the energy of elevated emotion and a coherent vision that pulls you forward. When you ask people what they truly want, many struggle to answer with clarity. They might say they want more money, better health, a relationship, or success, but these answers are vague and undefined. A vision requires specificity, not in the sense of rigid control, but in the sense of a felt reality. You must know what your future looks like, feels like, and sounds like. You must be able to close your eyes and walk into that reality in your mind with such vividness that it begins to feel more real than your current circumstances. Without this clarity, the mind has no direction, and the energy of your focus becomes scattered. Where there is no vision, the present moment will always be hijacked by old programs of survival, by the demands of the familiar, and by the distractions of the external world. But vision alone is not enough. The mind can construct images, but without emotional energy, those images remain lifeless. The thoughts of success, of health, of abundance are the electrical signals, but emotions are the magnetic field that draw those possibilities toward you. Thought without emotion is like trying to light a fire with no spark. You can repeat affirmations, visualize your goals, and tell yourself stories of success. But if you do so without truly feeling them, the body does not believe it, and the signal you broadcast into the world remains weak. The body continues to live in the emotional state of lack, stress, or fear, and the external reality simply mirrors that back. This is why alignment between vision and emotion is essential. The mind gives direction, the heart gives energy, and together they create coherence. When your thoughts of success are paired with genuine feelings of gratitude, as if that success has already happened, your brain and body begin to move into a new state of being. You are no longer just imagining a possibility. You are rehearsing a future self and embodying it in the present moment. Your brain begins to wire new circuits. Your body begins to release new chemicals, and you start to live in alignment with the reality you want to create. Most people struggle because they attempt to move toward a vision while still emotionally tied to the past. They set goals for financial freedom while still living in fear and scarcity. They write down affirmations of love while still feeling unworthy or resentful. They declare health as a priority while still identifying with stress or illness. This misalignment sends a contradictory message to the field around them. Their thoughts say one thing, but their emotions broadcast something else entirely. The field does not respond to what you think you want. It responds to who you are being. If you are thinking abundance but feeling lack, lack continues to be the magnet. If you are thinking success but feeling doubt, doubt shapes the results. The task, then, is to elevate emotion so that it matches the vision. Gratitude is one of the most powerful emotions because it signals to the body and mind that the event you desire has already occurred. When you feel grateful for a future that has not yet happened, your body cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. It begins to believe that the success is already here. Joy, inspiration, love, and excitement carry the same power. These elevated emotions are the energy that breathe life into your vision, transforming it from a distant dream into a present moment reality you begin to embody. This alignment requires practice. You cannot expect to feel elevated emotions once and then watch your life transform instantly. Just as the old self was rehearsed through years of repetition, the new self must also be rehearsed. Each time you close your eyes and step into your vision, each time you allow your heart to swell with gratitude, each time you feel the joy of already being that future self, you are training your body to live in a new emotional baseline. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, your body knows how to feel like the future has already arrived, even without evidence. This is when alignment takes root. When you live in this alignment, opportunities begin to flow in ways you cannot predict. The coherent signal you are sending out into the world resonates with people, places, and events that match it. The external world begins to mirror the internal state, because you are no longer waiting for conditions to change before you change. You have changed first. The vision becomes a magnet, pulling you forward effortlessly, and the elevated emotions fuel the energy that sustains you through challenges. Success stops being a distant goal and becomes a natural byproduct of the state of being you consistently embody. One of the most subtle but powerful reasons people fail to succeed is impatience. They begin the journey of change with excitement and determination, but very quickly they become restless when the results do not arrive according to their expected timeline. Impatience is not just a matter of frustration. It is a deep signal to the body and mind that the desired future will not come. It is an energetic broadcast of lack, of doubt, of disbelief, and the longer it is rehearsed, the more it reinforces the very reality the person is trying to escape. Impatience disconnects you from the present moment, and success cannot be created from anywhere but the present. Consider the way most people approach transformation. They decide they want something different. They may start visualizing, practicing new habits, or aligning themselves with new possibilities, but if the external evidence does not show up quickly enough, they begin to question the process. They ask, why isn't it working yet? Why hasn't anything changed? In that instant, they return to their old state of being. Their body remembers the feelings of disappointment, frustration, and lack, and those emotions become stronger than the vision of the future. The very act of checking and waiting for results collapses the energy of creation back into the patterns of the past. Impatience is a symptom of being too attached to outcomes and too focused on external validation. When you are impatient, you are essentially saying, I don't believe this is already mine. I don't trust the process. I don't trust myself. That energy of distrust is communicated through your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and the external world responds to that energy. Instead of signaling the reality you want to create, you signal the absence of it. The longer you live in impatience, the more evidence you collect of delay, obstacles, and failure, because life reflects back the state of being you are embodying. True success requires a completely different relationship with time. The future is not some distant point you must strain to reach. It is a potential that already exists, waiting for you to align with it in the present moment. Every time you embody the thoughts, feelings, and actions of your future self here and now, you are collapsing the timeline between who you are and who you are becoming. Patience is not passive. It is the active choice to stay present, to keep returning to the elevated state, and to allow reality to reorganize itself around the new signal you are sending. This is where many people misunderstand creation. They think success is about effort and control, about pushing harder and working longer. But true creation happens when you learn to surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means releasing the need to know how and when things will happen. It means trusting the intelligence of life, trusting the field of possibilities, and trusting the alignment between your vision and your elevated emotions. When you are impatient, you interfere with that intelligence. You attempt to control the timing, the circumstances, the people involved, and in doing so, you contract your energy. When you are patient, you expand. You stay in a state of openness, and in that openness, the unexpected has space to arrive. Disconnection from the present moment is always tied to impatience. The mind drifts into the future, constantly measuring and comparing. It says, it's been 3 weeks and nothing has changed, or I've done everything right and still there are no results. But those thoughts take you out of the now, and the now is the only place where transformation happens. If you cannot stay anchored in the present moment, your energy is scattered across time, and the coherence between your vision and your emotions dissolves. The present moment is the doorway to creation, because it is in the now that you can truly think greater thoughts, feel greater emotions, and embody a greater version of yourself. To master patience is to master the art of being. It is to show up each day and practice your vision, to rehearse your elevated emotions, to align your actions with your future self, and to do so without constantly looking for evidence. It is to live as though the reality you desire has already happened, and to find fulfillment in the practice itself rather than the external reward. When you stop measuring how long it will take, you collapse the illusion of time that keeps you separate from your vision. When you allow the present moment to be enough, the energy of impatience dissolves, and success has the space to manifest. Patience does not mean complacency. It does not mean waiting idly for something magical to happen. It means choosing to embody your future self now and trusting that life will align to match that vibration in its own perfect timing. It means releasing the stress of expectation and learning to rest in the state of gratitude, inspiration, and trust. Every time you practice patience, you are sending the signal that you already believe in the inevitability of your success. That belief is what draws it to you. This is why some people seem to attract opportunities effortlessly while others struggle endlessly. Those who are patient are not weighed down by time. They are immersed in the now. They live in the elevated emotions of their vision and allow reality to catch up. They don't collapse into frustration when external results take time, because they are not waiting for those results to feel successful. They are already living as though success is here. The external world has no choice but to mirror that state back to them, because they are consistently broadcasting coherence between thought and feeling. Impatience, on the other hand, keeps people in a constant state of lack. They live as though what they want is always in the future, never here, never now. They think they are moving forward, but energetically they remain in the same place. They are disconnected from the present moment, from the only place where change can truly happen. And until they learn to anchor themselves in patience, they will continue to recycle the past under the disguise of striving for the future. The reason most people never succeed is not because life is against them, not because they are missing some hidden piece of knowledge, and not because they are destined for mediocrity. The reason is that they live trapped in cycles of their own creation, bound by the identity of the past, addicted to the familiar emotions that keep them small, waiting for circumstances to change before they change themselves, lacking a vision powerful enough to move their hearts, and abandoning the process too soon because of impatience. These patterns are not evidence of weakness. They are simply the natural consequences of unconscious living. But the moment you become aware of these patterns, everything shifts. Awareness gives you the power to step out of the old identity and begin rehearsing a new one. It allows you to break the addiction to the emotions of the past and choose the unfamiliar path of growth. It reminds you that waiting for external circumstances is giving away your power, and that true success is born when you decide to embody the future now. It teaches you that thought without emotion is powerless, and that vision without the fuel of gratitude, joy, and inspiration remains only an idea. And it reveals that impatience is nothing more than the ego's attempt to control time, when in reality the present moment holds all the power you need. Success is not a matter of chance, but of coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions align with the version of you that already exists in the future, you draw that reality into the present. You are no longer a victim of your past, no longer a slave to the familiar, no longer waiting for life to give you permission. You become the creator, and from that state of being, success is not something you chase. It is something you embody, and the world responds accordingly.